Hello viewers and welcome to program State Affairs with Osama Khurshid. Viewers, today we will talk about the recent civilian atrocities and humiliation committed by the Syrian forces in Syria. Viewers, as we know that Syria is one of the vital Middle Eastern crises and the world's worst human rights disaster in decades. Historians may one day tell us to what degree the West wasted a chance to force Bashar al-Assad to the negotiation table. They had sufficient and timely pressure. They had been too brought bear on the forces, in particular through targeted strikes. That's how Slobodan Milosevic was forced to sign the 1995 Dayton Agreement, which put an end to the mass atrocities in Bosnia. Viewers, let me take you to the history. In the summer of 2013, a window of opportunity was arguably lost as a result of American hesitation. If archives are ever opened up, we may learn that it was the United States' failure to uphold red lines over chemical weapons used in Syria that emboldened Russia's Vladimir Putin to launch his military intervention in support of a dictator whose army had been massacring civilians since 2011. Russia has been Syrian President Bashar Assad's main supporter since the country's conflict began 7 years ago, and in 2015, Moscow joined the war on Mr. Assad's side, which tipped the balance of power in his favor. Viewers, let's talk about the humanitarian side of this conflict. Then we'll talk about the international arena in the end of the program. Viewers, there have been 500,000 deaths in Syria, and we are still counting. Last week, at least total number of dead in the week reached a figure of 530. Among them, over 130 are children. This all happened in eastern Ghouta. Viewers, Ghouta is one of the last pocket of rebel-held territory which is against the Bashar al-Assad's regime, and for that it's been systematically destroyed, whatever it costs, even the numerous human lives. Viewers, when these people reached hospitals, they have witnessed that major 4 hospitals of eastern Ghouta were also destroyed. On what planet we are living? The policy of Assad regime and Russian allies were clear in whole fiasco. The upsurge, the violent attacks, even on the civilians, would seem to suggest an increased determination of Bashar's regime to take the place by force. Viewers, let me show you some of the footages of the civilians who have suffered in the airstrikes from the Bashar regime. You can witness the level of atrocities which the Bashar's regime is committing. Let's have a look on these pictures, please.
يا كل الدول النايمة، يا الخلايا النايمة، اصحوا حالكم. نحن عنا الله، كل يوم والتاني عم يروح لنا عائلات وطائفات، عنا الله، وهذا انشروها، اما نروح مسكوا انشروها كل الدول، كل يوم عم يروحوا شهداء، لك اطفال، نحن ارهابيين نحن.
كل يوم ضرب، كل يوم ضرب، كل يوم سوي، كل يوم على الموال، نتلاقوا بعض نطلع، طب نشوفها. كل سنة بيساي، يعني والله نضرب من لينا. مي ما في مي. لك كل يوم عملنا موت، لك كل يوم كسرنا منا بالأرض. لك لا حرامات، لا ضرريح، إذا بننزل نقدم من بيت تبع الإيدين، لك إذا طلعنا بنقدم يعني بنقدم. لك الله يوفقك يا رجال الأدب، لك قلت الأطفال عم تقود من الشوق ضرب. لك شو بدنا نساوي يعني حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. يعني بس طالبين من كل الأمان، لك الأمان يا أخواني الأمان، لك يا الله كل الدول العرب عم تعرف فينا. يعني
So viewers, have you have seen these pictures? These pictures we have seen and the analysis we are hearing from this comfortable chamber are the agonizing reality for hundreds of thousands of civilians in Syria. Viewers, the world seems helpless in the face of such carefully targeted violence, which is the worst in the country, that has for 7 years seen the worst of what man do to man and child in the modern age. Even the whole international arena is lousy in making the move against Bashar al-Assad. Let me tell you that on what tertiary level the international arena is working for Syria. On last Friday, the United Nations Security Council has unanimously demanded a 30-day ceasefire in Syria to allow aid to get in and medical evacuations. But viewers, Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia had repeatedly called an immediate ceasefire unrealistic. On contrary, the two main rebel groups controlling the Ghouta enclave, Jaish al-Islam and Falak al-Rahman, welcomed the Security Council demand, but they vowed to fight back if there were renewed attacks. A United Nations Security Council resolution passed on Saturday calling for a 30-day truce that has been a dead letter with Moscow, because the Damascus regime's main backer, Russia, setting its own term for the truce. However, the ceasefire does not apply to fighting against the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda or individual groups undertaking the entities associated with them. Viewers, in short, this means the Syrian regime of President Assad can continue fighting jihadists in whole Syria, specifically Idlib, who are linked to Al-Qaeda. Interestingly, Idlib is the last Syrian province not in the government hands. Viewers, even after the truce, there were aerial bombing, there were atrocities, there were airstrikes. This whole fiasco happened and the concept of mankind benevolence has been shredded. In this whole civilian humiliation, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, said, "We are late to respond to this crisis, very late." Whereas the German Chancellor Angela Merkel's office said that she and French President Emmanuel Macron discussed the situation in a phone call on Sunday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. She said they called on Russia. The officials of German Chancellor said they called on Russia to exert maximum pressure on the Syrian regime to achieve an immediate halt to the airstrikes and fighting. Viewers, let's get on the ground realities. There are 5.6 million people in 1,244 communities which are in acute need. The increased violence and civil war actually deprived civilians of food and medicine indispensable to their survival. What a misery! What a miserable world we are living in. The cities have been destroyed in Syria. The chemical weapons have been used more than 180 times according to the Syrian Network for Human Rights. And the last, I just want to say that Syria will haunt us for a long time, yet since the fall of Raqqa last year, the crisis has gradually mutated into something resembling a world war. Although the large powers involved in it, which are Russia, Iran, Turkey, the United States of America, are not expressly in open warfare with one another, but in whole crisis, the humans are suffering. It is pertinent to mention over here, when there are interests of major powers, they can conquer Iraq on humanitarian basis and called in responsibility to protect doctrine. Yes, viewers, I am talking about the United States invasion of Iraq back in 2003, which they did with the help of R2P doctrine, which means responsibility to protect doctrine, and glorifying the concept of American exceptionalism, that the American values are so exceptional and they will go to fight for the humanitarian, that American values are so exceptional that they will go and fight for the humans. Now, I don't want to be cynic, but viewers, let's think that why Bashar al-Assad cannot be removed? Or what stops the world and United Nations to stop him, or at least jot down a framework to control the collateral damage? Or at least jot down a framework to control the collateral damage and atrocities which his regime is making. Whenever the regime changes, it's always fulfill the interests of major power. But in long and short term, it's the people of that state who suffers. With this last thing, I need to take your leave. Please take care of yourself and your national affairs. Goodbye and fi aman Allah.